Mr. Michael David.
Yes, Your Worship.
Do you know why you're in court this morning?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm the plaintiff today, and I served the petition today in the court for mention, Your Worship.
Mrs. Rita David.
Yes, Your Lordship.
Do you know why you're in court this morning?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Mr. Michael, let's hear from you.
Your Worship, I served this petition today because my suspicion is now mounting that the 3 kids that my wife gave me are in fact not mine. That is why I've opened this case. I've begun to notice that none of the children shares any similarity with me.
Mrs. Rita David.
Yes, Your Lordship.
You heard him. What do you have to say?
I don't know why Michael will wake up one morning and all he thinks about is to accuse me of infidelity. Saying all our kids are not his. Your Lordship, I'm really short of words. I don't know what to say.
Okay, so Mr. David, when did you start having your doubts?
I actually started to suspect after the second child, about 3 years back. I let my doubts slide earlier because I felt after the first one, maybe he just takes after her, even though there's not even much resemblance there. But I figured this one does not look like me. But after the second and several other findings that I'll make clear on now, I began to be suspicious that the children are in fact not mine.
Now listen, both of you. When you're talking here this morning, I need you to be very clear what you're saying.
Yes, Your Worship.
You don't go saying the stuff I found, the findings I made. What are the findings you made?
So first, I noticed that they don't look like me, none of the children. I have an elongated head. My head is long. And these children, their heads are round.
What?
Order in the courtroom. Mrs. Rita David, you sure have an attitude problem. You only speak when you're asked to. Do you understand? You may proceed.
So then I'm wondering why. So I started an investigation and I have printed my wife's bolt history. And in that bolt history, several locations that she visited that she actually had no business going to. 12 midnight checking into a hotel several times, Your Worship. Even there are places that she went to that I went out of my way to ask her in conversation where she was on that particular date, and she gave me an entirely different, very distant place from there. And this is what confirmed my suspicion, Your Worship, that she had been cheating.
So, Mrs. Rita, you heard him. Do you have anything to say to that?
There is no way I go to that my husband is not in the know of it. And many times they have proved it.
So, Mrs. Rita, was he doing his fatherly duties? Like, was he taking care of the children, paying their school fees? You know, the rent, buying their clothes and all that?
No, Your Lordship.
Mr. David,
Your Worship.
you were not taking care of the kids because of assumptions that they are not your kids.
I take charge of every duty that is mine in that house. I fulfill my role as husband and father in that home. Ever since we got married till now, and I have proof.
So can I have like a bank statement or something?
Yes, Your Worship, I have printed here. Every transaction I've made, from school fees, rent, anything, any major expense, I have it printed.
Okay, you can pass them to the court.
Yes, Your Worship.
Alright, thank you. Here I have with me the bank statement from Mr. Michael David. Here is a school fees receipt of 350,000 for Miss Joy David. That's your daughter, I guess. Another school fees receipt for Mr. John David. That's your son, I guess.
Yes,
For a crèche, 250,000. I mean, how then do you accuse him of not taking care of the children? And there are other bills not mentioned. What do you call taking care of? Because I want to understand. Mrs. Rita, now this is the last lie you will tell before the honorable court. I'm sure you know that's a punishable offense. You don't lie just to lead us on, okay? Okay, am I clear on that?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Let's go into the DNA results. and they read as follows. When it comes to the case of Miss Joy David, Mr. Michael, you are not the father. Order in court, please. And in the case of Master John David, Mr. Michael, you are not the father. Order in court, please. Last result read as follows. When it comes to the case of Master Joseph David, you are not the father. Order in court, please. Like, Mrs. Rita, how do you do this? Like 3 children, and you lie to him. Like 1, 2, 3, from the birth of the child to the bonding of father and a child, from that paying of school fees. How could you? And here you were crying, and somewhere deep down I felt he may be mixing it up somewhere. The court will go for a short break. So we are back in section. In the case of Mr. Michael David and Mrs. Rita David, on the DNA results of their 3 kids, Miss Joy David, Master Joseph David, and Master John David, DNA results haven't proven that these 3 kids are not the children of Mr. Michael David. Order, please. Mrs. Rita David, the court will not give you 3 months to move out of Mr. David's house. You have just 1 month to move those children to the rightful owner. Give the children to their father. They deserve the right to know who their father is. So you have 1 month to do that. And Mr. David, you can take your time. You can decide to be away for a year or thereabout, but the court will see to it that Mrs. Rita David vacates your property in a month's time. That's my judgment.